Hello, Culture Matters podcast. Boy, am I excited about our episode today. Before I introduce you to our guest, here is a quote just for this episode. Patience is waiting, not passively waiting, that is laziness, but to keep going when the going is hard and slow. That is patience. The two most powerful warriors are patience and time. Leo Tolstoy. Our guest today exemplifies both. Our guest today is a mentor to countless people in and outside of their industry. They are a role model to countless people in their lives, me included. They are a friend of not only myself, but you, the listener. If you listen to this show and you like the show, then you definitely like them because you're listening to the show. They decided to leave the golden handcuffs when most would say it's too late, right? Define the odds and statistics of starting a business in the late 30s. I believe it was David Rubenstein, one of my heroes, that had actually articulated that is a defying the statistical odds because very, very, very few companies are started in the late 30s, early 40s. And in a few short years, the real Brian Hess has built some extraordinary businesses. And man, today I'm very excited to bring Brian back on the show for the 247th time to have a very important conversation that I think exemplifies how he's done what he's done so quickly, but living by this quote of patience and time, nonetheless. Not so. And today is actually New Year's Eve that we're recording it early in the morning of 2023. And hopefully you're listening to this in 2025 or 2028 or 2024, thinking, where were you on New Year's Eve in 2023? So thank you, Brian Hess, for coming on the Culture Runners podcast at the least comfortable time on a Sunday. And thank you.
My pleasure, man. I love that quote. I think I think the world we live in today of what do they call it? Hustle culture or something like that. I just saw those words being thrown around recently. I think those that are doing well and will do well for the long haul have the ability to balance patience and pursuit because at the end of it, man, I'm also a big believer in the power of, what I would call the compound interest of people. When you are all those things get into balance, where people feel like they're in the right place and things are moving, and sometimes they might feel like they're moving too slow. One of the things that I said this year that just kind of came out at the top contractor school retreat in Vegas. I said, high performers never look at how we're doing right now moving forward, and we never feel like we're moving fast enough. But right before we jumped on this episode, I was looking at my own show, and just a year ago I was broadcasting from a different office. And those are the things that I think as high performers or people that are in pursuit of another level of excellence, we can get caught up in what we're not doing so much that we actually lose the appreciation for what we have done. And that's something that I think people appreciate perspective, because people don't have it for themselves sometimes. And it's why I named my podcast originally, the Perspective Podcast. I did the show every morning called Morning Perspective. because I believed in the power of that. You know, it reshaped my life. You know, when I started looking at things differently, uh, my whole life changed in front of my face. It's like, well, what if I just started saying, what if this, instead of what if this happens in a positive light? You know, what if this, period of time that I have to go through to be able to build these businesses, what if that's the greatest period of my life? The suffering, the difficulty, the risk, the stress, all of those things, because that's what I thought about before I started the businesses. Like, man, this is going to be hard. This is going to suck. And everybody around me reminded me of, how much it was going to suck and how risky it was. And so I said, what if that's the greatest period of my life? And it's an interesting question now, almost, 3 months shy of 6 years later. I was right. That suffering was some of the greatest memories that I have in my life, of building this business, of going through the difficulty, fighting through those hard days, building a brand that becomes recognizable. So from remembering sending our logo off to get created on Fiverr, by the way, like somebody overseas built the logo of a massively successful company for, I don't even remember what it was. Maybe it was $50. Had quotes from marketing companies for like $8,000 or $10,000 to create our logo and brand, and all the stationery and business cards. And thankfully for me, we didn't have $8,000 or $10,000 to spend on that kind of stuff back then, because I love our logo now, and we wouldn't have it if I had paid those people.
What do you say to the listener that is in that position you were then, that feels they lack resources? What's your reminder to them, or your perspective for them?
Man, there's a great book out there by Damon John from Shark Tank called The Power of Broke. There's a real power in lacking resources, because when you lack resources, you are forced to create innovation. You are forced to innovate the process, the people, everything that you do requires an extra level of thought, because you don't have, you can't lose, you can't take the same risks. You have to calculate things more. You have to be careful about who your first hire is, because if that person's a loser, you're in big trouble, right? And, so I would say there's a power in that. There's a power in having resources too. Different, but never ever lose the engine that drives you. The lack of resources that drive you. It's like, man, if I actually think this all the time when we're dealing with things. I say to myself, like, are we moving fast enough, or are we getting comfortable because of our success? Right? Because I've seen success lull people into failure. It lulls them to sleep, and they end up failing because, they got too comfortable. And, so that feeling of desperation that you have, when you don't have anything and you're just trying to build something. I had this conversation last night at the hockey game with a guy who I've well-known dude. And he wanted to come meet me. So he came up to our suite, and we were talking about, I talked about how many people give up on their dreams because of health insurance, 401k, right? The golden handcuffs, as we call it, or the salary that they get through the company that they work for. And he told me a story that 1 month after he took the leap to leave the comfortable corporate job that he had a heart attack, and he didn't have any health insurance.
Wow.
So needed all kinds of medical attention, 6-figure hospital bill. And crazy story. This should give the listener some inspiration. This young man at the time, little bit, he's not old now, but he was much younger, this young man wrote a letter to the hospital and told them what had happened, that he went to chase his dreams because that's what was inside of him. And he had left this job. And so he didn't have any health insurance, and that these medical bills would crush him, if he had to pay them. And the hospital forgave all of his bills.
Really?
And you know what I
Oh,
said to him? I said, it's interesting, man. I used to think in a scarcity mindset about resources, any kind of resources, whether it be money or otherwise. And then I met some people along the way that lived different lives than I did, that were exposed to different things than I was. And I realized that, like, if you're a good person, man, and you're out there trying to do some good for the world, somebody will help you. Like, somebody will come and help you if you are a good enough person. And you just got to have the courage. You got to check your ego enough, right, to be able to go and ask for the help. But think about writing that letter. It takes a humble nature to write that letter and to say, hey, I did this, and I'm not happy about it now because God's timing of me having a heart attack wasn't great, but here I am, and I'm throwing myself at the mercy of whoever's reading this letter. And, I said to him, if it wasn't the hospital, dude, it would have been somebody else. Somebody would have seen the gifts that you have, and they would have helped you. And so, for everybody out there, like, that lack of resources, man, is just an opportunity for you to reach another level of creativity, innovation, motivation. Let it drive you. Don't let it paralyze you.
how many square feet in 2023 was that first office, that when you were looking back to see how many episodes that you had recorded in 2023, right? How many square
Well,
feet was that office?
well, let's go
What's
one step further back to the office that we shared just a few years ago. 2021, we were in an office that was about 85 square feet, just a single office inside of a Regis building, shared office space building. I got to meet my good buddy, Eric Cunningham, working in that office. I just had breakfast with him a few days ago. Now we both have 12,000 square feet. But the office right before this one, I think, was 3,000, give or take, something like that. And
and
now
that was moved into when?
that was call it well, it was December of 2022.
So December of 2020 to 2022 is 3,000 square feet. And how many square feet was the 2021 office?
85 square feet.
85,000 or
No,
85?
85 square feet, no commas.
85 square feet.
Yeah, so I did this before, but I'll do it here. So, 85 square feet compared to where we are right now is it is 0.7%.
Wow. Yeah, because that would go into
85 into 12,000, yes.
into 12,000. Yeah,
Yeah.
because 10% would be 1,200. Holy cow. If you really think about that.
Yeah, yeah. And it's wild, dude, because those are the things that we don't really stop and think about. We don't stop and think about. And dude, that's the dynamics of, we talk about it all the time. The entrepreneur has to have almost a disconnection from reality in some way.
Yes. Yes.
Like, you have to be able to, like, not think about how damn scary it is at times. The reality and the weight of some of the things that we have to do. That first office, man, Eli and I have so many memories in there that we've talked about it a lot. And I think I'm gonna, at some point in 24 here, I'll take action on it and go. I want to go over, I want to, like, literally propose to Regis. I want to buy all that office furniture that was in that room that we were in, because it's still in there. And I want to rebuild that room inside of our office.
I love that idea.
so that
Symbolism.
we can show people, you know, where it started and how it started, you know, and not for like the, hey, you know, you should be grateful at what we sacrificed to get here. It's just like the perspective that that room would provide to people is incredible. You know, we've got every individual office that we have right now is probably bigger than that, you know, and Eli and I shared that 85 square feet.
I wanted to share this with you and this ask your feedback. Maybe a synthesis of this conversation. Negative emotion drives innovation, but positive emotion guarantees it.
I would agree with that. Because
if I'm listening,
listen, if it doesn't convert from negative to positive, it becomes toxic. Meaning, you know, right now, you know, Patrick Bet-David just came out with the new book, Choose Your Enemies Wisely. I believe in that. I believe in, you know, having those people that doubted you. I had a list of those. I still have a list in my iPhone today of, you know, those people that doubted me. That as I think it's Coach Prime that says we keep receipts. You know, there's people out there that are going to doubt you. There's people out there that are going to talk about you and laugh at you as you're trying to build something. And the power of the entrepreneur is to have the vision to cut through all of that. But I believe that if you don't convert the negative emotions to positives, you know, like that list, I could pull it up right now and look at all the names. And today I'm grateful for those people. At the time, though, I was very angry at the way that they treated me. I was very upset at the way that they talked about me and didn't believe in me. Because to me, it was, you know, it's you know, when people do that, and this is how flippant people are at, you know, just casting their opinion. They don't live your life. And so when people cast that judgment on you, they cast it on your whole life. Right. So like at the time, the risk that I had was that I had 3 kids and a wife that stayed at home. So like somebody believing that I wouldn't make it, in my mind, not in theirs, because they're just surface level throwing out their opinion, right? But in my mind, it's like, this person must think I'm irresponsible enough to not take care of my family, to put my wife and children at risk, to think I'm not going to make it. Like, who the hell would ever say that about something? But they don't think that. They don't know, right? They don't know me. And this is the other part is, you know, most of the people that cast those things into our lives, you know, because people do this all the time. I'm sure it happens to you, whether we realize, like, whether we hear about the people that say shit about us. It's a whole different, you know, whole different thing. But there's people that cast the doubt all the time. But I said this to someone last night. I'm like, you know, this world that we live in, especially the public nature of social media and, you know, the networking that we do as business owners and entrepreneurs today, like you end up knowing a lot of people, but you don't really know them, right? And so I used this quote last night. I said, you know, I live by this rule. Like if somebody has a problem with me, they should call me. And if they don't have my phone number, they don't know me well enough to have a problem with me. Because that's how people are, you know, people in our industry, in you know, the construction industry, the paving industry, you know, people talk a lot. They have a lot of opinions. And, you know, you as an individual you'll never be defined by someone else's opinion. You'll only be defined by what you choose to ingest of that opinion. If you choose to take that negative opinion of you and own it, then that's going to affect your life. It's going to affect your progress. It's going to affect your ability to lead. It's going to affect your self-confidence. It's going to affect how you show up. But if you can put that opinion in a place that temporarily drives you to overcome, to prove somebody wrong, to have a driver, but again, temporary, to have a driver that gets you over the hump, right? Something that catapults you over the hump. And I'll tell you, man, that it did it for me for the first 6 months of our business, where there were people that, told me, oh man, you should just take a job and build your resume, stay in one place for a couple of years, all the things, and I'll never forget this, man. When we started the company, I was so driven by that, but also by the to some degree, the fear of not delivering, that the salary that company, that a company had offered me to work for them, I sold that in 60 days. So what I would have made in a year, I sold in 60 days of opening our business. And I'll never forget that, man. I remember thinking to myself, like, yeah, I guess you were wrong.
Mm.
I guess all the things that you said about me probably were more about you than me. They were more about your own lack of confidence, your own, because people project those things on us that they see in themselves. And specifically, the person that I'm thinking about is definitely this. 6 years later, I've got to watch, the progress of, what we're doing and what this individual is doing. And, listen, I don't wish anybody anything but success, but people will show you who they are over a long period of time, right? Like, people can pretend, they can try to hustle you, they can put you in a spot where, they think they're better than you, so to say, in a scenario. But make no mistake, for those people out there that have thought about doing this or thought about taking the jump, like, time proves it all, man. Time proves what actually happens. Time proves who's going to win and who's going to lose, because it's not about, the old cliche quote is, we overestimate what we can do in a day. And I would argue a week, sometimes even a month at times. But we underestimate what we can do in a year or 5 years or 10 years. And if you plan on getting into entrepreneurship for what it will do for you this year, just keep the job. Because what you have is not a dream that's going to drive your life or purpose. You probably have something that's driven more by the acquisition of resources, meaning, you think you can go make more money this way. And if you have a talent at the level that, you can make that kind of money quickly, temporary, like short term, you'd probably make more money working for somebody. You'd be able to convince somebody to pay you more this year, and you have a lot less headaches and worries and things like that. Like, this game of business is a decade-long strategy. It's 2 decades, 3 decades. The most successful people that I study, read about, etc. It's not about, they never talk about what they did day to day. They talk about what their strategies were for a decade, for 5 years, for, when they got some resources, what they did in the next 20 with them. And that's where I'm at, man. I'm 44 years old today, 44 and a half technically. And, I don't think about, I spend a lot more time thinking about the next decade than I do thinking about what I'm going to do in January. And it doesn't mean I don't think about January. I definitely do. And I definitely think about the next 6 months. But I would say the governor of my vision Like what balances that desire to go faster, like to go quickly, to lose my patience with scenarios. I always think like, how will this look 5 years from now? If I go too fast and I run the risk of running some people over in the process, right? Because that's what happens a lot of times in organizations. Not everybody is moving at the same pace. Am I willing to sacrifice that in order to get this? And sometimes the answer is yes, right? It's like, we need to do this. Like, this is really important. But I'd say 80-90% of the time, the answer is, I don't think this will matter much 5 years from now, as long as all these other things are happening, right? And, I think that's a great measuring stick of how we lead, how we sift through things, how we keep life in perspective with comparison to business, because business is a part of life. When I had Ed Milet on the show, he said something I'll never forget, man. He said, business is a form of expression for us. It's not just about the money we make. Money is the byproduct of all the other stuff. That's the end result. But the way that we build businesses, the way that we impact the people around us, the way that we serve the community and the world, it's an expression of who we are, right? Like who we are as individuals and how we want to make a difference in people's lives. And, so for me, I think that was always a subconscious, checkpoint for me, is like, what does this mean? Because, the other part about entrepreneurship is, when you are an entrepreneur, you invite yourself to take losses repeatedly. It's not easy. You invite yourself into, all the negative things you could think about. Like, that's part of the game, man. It's part of the process. You're not going to win all the time, and it's okay. At the end of the day, the greatest memories that I have so far in 6 years are sitting right at this desk that I'm talking to you from. Just me, a computer, a legal pad, and a telephone. Picking it up hundreds of times a day. It was just me versus me, man. There was nobody here to lead me. There was nobody here to manage me, encourage me. My encouragement was the three little faces that would come outside my glass door of my home office and remind me what game we were playing here. And to me, those memories, man, I don't ever want to lose that. When things go sideways in business, the first thing I do is go back to that. Pick up the phone and start calling people, right? Pick up the phone and start calling. And because that's my natural habitat. That's where I feel most at home, and yeah, so long answer to your question, and lots of stuff to unpack there, but the journey is always worth it, is what I would finish it with. Like, it's an amazing thing to look back at your life and know that, what you contributed to your own life, the sacrifices that you made, the things that didn't go well, sometimes the nights that you don't sleep very well, it's all worth it in the end, man, if it's for the right reasons.
When did you move into the new office? What month?
Literally a year ago right now, December of 2022.
And that was the 12,000 square foot one.
Yes.
And there was a period. How long was the period? How many months or weeks was your organization in the 3,000 square foot?
We moved in there, I believe, in February of 22. So we were only in there for 10 months.
And how many months or years were you in the 85 square foot?
I think we were in there for a year and a half, and then there was office space in between there that we shared with another company, with Eric Cunningham and his company, who also ironically are extremely successful. Both cultures that shared space together built amazing companies and teams. Yeah, so there was I think we were in that office for about a year and a half. Maybe a year.
And the listeners listening to this in 2025, what square footage are you in?
Probably at least 24,000, if not more, would be my guess. Things happen every day, man. I was, just sending a message to somebody this morning that it amazes me every day, man, the people that I meet that, I spend time thinking about who we need, what are the next pieces of the puzzle, to be able to move the mission forward, not just of the Pavement Group, but all of the other entities that we have that are in motion, that are being created, that are, and it's amazing how quickly sometimes those solutions, those people that, are, you could call it an answer to your prayers, how quickly those people show up in your life sometimes. And, there's no feeling for me like finding the right people. Truthfully, it's, when you find the right people to do things with, everything else gets easier when you got the right people. And, for me, God blessed me with a skill of being able to, talk to people and articulate a vision. And, when I do that, and, last night I met somebody that's like, literally a legend, somebody I've known for decades and I've never met in the same city as me. And, to have somebody like that believe in our vision a lot, from a distance, and just, he was, kind of directed to pay attention to us by somebody else who's also in that same category here in Pittsburgh. And, when I look around at that, I think God hands you resources for a reason, to be able to take those people's lives and make their lives better somehow by being part of something. And, interesting perspective. I never really looked at it this way, but, though everybody's part of something. Everybody's part of an organization. They're part of a culture. They're part of a mission. Whether they believe in that mission or not is questionable. You never know. And so, when people don't believe in that mission, man, what a shame. When people don't align with the culture, they don't align with the vision, they don't have anything in common with the people that they work alongside anymore, if they ever did in the first place. And I get the gift of watching the fire in the eyes of the people when they find something that they think they can align with. When they find something that they're like, dude, this is what I've been searching for.
Mm.
And I can see it in people. Like, I can see, like, that's a person that's been looking for what it is that we're doing. And if we can find those things in our lives, I couldn't find it, so I created it. But I say this to people all the time. If I would have found what we have, we wouldn't be here, because I would have just worked in that culture. I would have been happy to be there, because I always wanted to be part of something. I always wanted to be, it's why I've always had partners in business, because I want to be part of a team. I love that aspect of togetherness of people. And I get to see that fire, that excitement in people's eyes, that like, man, if I could be part of that, we could change the world. Every once in a while, somebody says that to me. Like, dude, I feel like this whole thing could like change the world. And I'm like, that's how you know somebody gets it. You know, like they see like the impact. It's not about changing the whole world. It's about changing a piece of it, you know. Jesus didn't go out and change the whole world, you know. He just changed a few.
Hmm.
But look at the result. And so, you know, by no means am I comparing what we're doing to Jesus's ministry. I'm just saying the structure, the concept is simple to understand. It's like pick the right people, surround yourself with people that can make a difference in them, and have a crystal clear vision of what it should look like. And you never know what comes from it. You never know what hatches from it. You never know how that impact, that vision can turn into reality and truly change the world.
I have a quote. We are what we repeatedly do. Excellence, then, is not an act, but a habit. Aristotle. What feedback would you have for the listener on how you, from May of 23 to this recording, have over 212 or where thereabouts episodes, recordings on the Brian Hess Show, and today on New Year's Eve recording an additional podcast on a different podcast platform, but which I should add, this is the 20th time you've been on the Culture Matters podcast. Hold the high
Title.
yeah, no, there's some close second and thirds and fourths.
I'm saving a spot back there for the trophy.
That's to come. Yeah, that's a great idea. It'll have to be like a book or something like that. Here it is. So yeah, advice to the listener, how you did that.
Well, first of all, I would say, you know, that show, it's funny. Last week, Vinny said to me, we were talking to somebody, and Vinny said that doing the show, you know, Vinny helps produce the show in the morning. And so doing the show every day live at 8 a.m. Eastern fixed Vinny's problem of being late.
He
It
said
was
that.
interesting. He said that, right? And so
Wow, wow.
I said, hey, me too. And he goes, what do you mean? And I said, well, it's, you know, 650 something episodes, but every one of them has been, you know, the vast majority. I've done interviews, but, you know, call it 600 of them have been live at whatever time it was, you know, 8 o'clock Eastern. I used to do it at 7:30 a.m. Eastern. But I think there's something to, you know, a commitment like that shapes who you are, that shapes, you know, who you want to become. And I think, you know, listen, there's always things. I would share this too, because I think it's so important. And like we talked about it before we recorded this show, like you don't always feel like it. And if you only do the things that you feel like, you're not going to get very much done in life. You know, you're not going to go very far. You know, Jordan Peterson says that, you know, those that are most successful in life are those that learn to suffer the best. And he's right. You know, it comes down to how we learn how to recreate our life and the vision of what it is that we want to do, and the key things that are going to get us there. And so, you know, this show, the Brian Hess Show, and this show have introduced me to more people than I can count. I don't believe I would have any of the relationships that I have, or at least most of them, if I didn't share my thoughts with people.
Hmm.
If I didn't, I don't know that half the people that I meet have ever listened to an episode. But I know what they do is they go and look at the episode number and they see something in a person that can show up 650 plus times. And that is important. And so for those of you out there that struggle with, creating self-discipline or delivering on the promises that you make to yourself, you have to set a standard for yourself in your life. And sometimes that is forcing yourself to do something that's completely outside your comfort zone. Some would even view it as crazy. Like, who would do a podcast Monday through Friday every day at 8 a.m. Eastern? Well, I would, 650 times. And I can tell you, I'd start back over at episode 1 tomorrow and do it all over again because of the fruits that it has provided to my life. It's an exceptional way to not just develop your own consistency and self-confidence and all that, but to meet people, put yourself out there, to talk through things, frankly, that otherwise would maybe stay bottled up inside of you. It's in a lot of ways, and I've asked a lot of people this, like, those discussions, whether it's me leading it on the Brian Hess Show or it's me being on someone else's podcast, like, man, it's like therapy in a way, right? Like, you get to talk about the things that you feel and think, and none of us read, write, listen, and speak enough. And the more we do it, the better we get at it. And so, when we have to do this, like, think about this. I've had to prepare for a show 650 times. I've gotten pretty good at how to put together content to present it. I've had to speak 650 times live on a camera. I've had to overcome the adversity that comes with technology being part of that solution, right? It doesn't always work. We've had recordings that didn't record. We've had audio that sounded like crap. We've had, guests that had to reschedule 72 times, right? Just everything that you deal with there, it's all a lesson. And it puts you in a position to be a better person, to be a better leader, to be a better orator, to be a better. And so I would say this in summary. Taking action is what changes anything in your life. It's not about what you think about. It's not about what you're going to do. It's about what you are doing, what you have done, what you continue to do. That'll change your life. When I look at what we've been able to accomplish as a business, in 6 years, and I say, like, on the measuring stick of life, like, how different is my world today than it was 6 years ago? And dude, it's not even comparable. Like, if I think about the list of problems that I had 6 years ago, and then I think about the problems that I have today, it's what helps me maintain perspective. Like, dude, you could easily get caught up in the fact that, like, some of the things I deal with now are hard, right? Like, they're difficult. They're another level of emotional. They're another level of hard conversations. They're another level of, it's all difficult. It's another level of financial, risk and challenges and all that. Like, I used to say, like, oh, shoot, man, we lost $1,000, right? It, like, and that was a real problem for real. Like, if somebody loses $1,000, in their business when they're starting, it's a real problem. And, today those problems are completely different. And I always remind the team, I say, these are the problems. Never forget, these are the problems we prayed to have 5 years ago, 6 years ago. We prayed for these problems, to have so much work that we can't get it all done, to have so many opportunities that we sometimes fall short on follow-up, to have so much abundance in different areas that we have a hard time managing it. And if we lose that perspective, man, we can like destroy ourselves in the moment, destroy the success that we've built because we feel so bad for ourselves for that weight of the problems that we deal with now. It's like, no, you created that. You created those problems. It's what you prayed for. You can't pray for just the good stuff. The challenges come along with it. It's how you learn to get to the next level. Because if you can't deal with these challenges, God's not going to bless you with the next level.
Hmm.
You're going to get stuck on this section of the mountain. You got to learn how to overcome. And by overcoming, you prepare yourself for the next level. And so I'd say, man, that show has been, the thing that consistently, I've taken a couple hiatuses, but 650 episodes over, 4 years. And I'd say this too, I'm glad I took those hiatuses. It gave me perspective to step away and look at it and say, I need to change this show. It needs to reinvent itself and go to the next level. And so we invested in the things that allow it to go to the next level. It's not just the content. It's everything else that goes into it that changes it too. Because the ability to get the right guests, to get the right people to participate, to get the right people to support the show. You can't just do the same thing that you did on episode 1 on episode 650. People eventually, they still listen, they like it, but it's got to evolve because you should be evolving, you should be growing. And so, for all of us, it's that activity that allows us the perspective to become who we want to become and to be always becoming. Should always be becoming something new, reinventing yourself. I tell myself this, today's the day, right? I'll write down today at some point, what does a successful 2024 look like? What does it look like? Because if I'm the same person, if I'm the same father, if I'm the same husband, if I'm the same leader, if I'm the same friend, if I'm the same at the end of 2024 as I was at the end of 2023, then I just wasted 365 days of my life. And so for me, that priority and those things that I come up with through that process of discovering, like, what does it actually look like for me next year? Those things are what guide my whole journey through that year. I've had the same goals on the lock screen of my phone for a year, looking at them. And they drive me. And by the way, not every goal on that list gets checked off in the year that we do it, because I set really aggressive goals. But most of them do. And at least the behaviors that would get me to that goal get implemented. Even if we fall short, it's like, man, we're making progress, dude, because life's going to throw things in your way, obstacles, challenges. And but the path to get there, the vision of where we're going, the compass that's directing us to get there, it never changes. It's pointed in that direction if we can get focused on it. And so I would challenge everybody, do that exercise. I've started doing it monthly, where I say, what's a good January look like? What's a good February look like? And so now this year, 2024, at all the companies, we will have monthly conversations about this. What are we going to do this month? What's it look like? What actions do we have to take? What support do we need? What investments do we have to make? What do we got to do, right? And so, we've set budgets for the year, we've set initiatives for the year, we've set all those things. Well, how do they get accomplished? That's the second question. They get accomplished by what we do in January. Now let's break that down further. What are we going to do the first week of January? How do the 5 days that compile that week lead to the result? And so at the end of the day, it's the actions, the activity that we take every day, the activity that we do every day, the actions that we take every day that lead us day by day by day to formulating a year. And so that year is just a reflection of the decisions that you made. good, bad, or otherwise. And by the way, if you had a shitty year in 2023, it doesn't mean anything about 2024. It really doesn't. Like, it can change. When you look back at 2024, it can be literally night and day. I'm proof of it. I had some shitty years, but I never ever showed up differently. I never said to myself, like, I'm a loser because I had a shitty year. What I would say to myself is, I'm a winner who's losing. What is it that's making me be that way? And then I would unpack that and fix it. And little by little, you become a little bit better at certain things, a little bit better. And then you realize, right, that the tide rises on your failures or inadequacies, or the tide lowers rather, and you start to see different rocks. Now I've got, instead of big boulders of issues in my life, I've got smaller rocks and eventually pebbles if I keep working on it. That, now I'm trying to dial the dial a little bit in these areas of my life so I can get exponentially better from those little turns. It's why I love sports so much, man. You watch receivers, they don't try to reinvent the wheel with how to catch the football or how to run a route or they just focus on every detail of making sure it's all correct, making sure the fundamentals are done properly, and that how they show up, how they move, how they pivot, and the same is true for your life, same is true for business. And how do you get there? It's the practice that you put in every day.
Referring back to the consistency of the live broadcast, thoughts on this? The crowd shapes an individual's responsibility because of its inherent accountability. People were expecting you to get to their view of your work, meaning they're not in the building, right? They're not seeing you and Vinny. They're just in the world, wherever the hell they are, waiting for the broadcast. So there's an expectation there that you're not going to let them down. I want to add my opinion to this. I think a leader shows up for people.
Dude, absolutely. Because
thoughts?
if I there were times when, I'm sick, I got a sick child, whatever the case is, where I couldn't make it there by 8 a.m. Eastern, right? And the people care. They're not just giving me shit because I didn't do the show. Like genuinely, I get messages like, is everything okay? So you create your own accountability through the expectations that you set publicly. So it's like, this is the expectation, Monday through Friday, 8 a.m., right? And dude, things happen. I just talked to a guy the other day that has a radio show and he's got to, go live at 6 a.m. You'll love this one. He's like, you guys may have heard this story before, but, he's like, we got to be there every day at 6. He's like, but did you guys ever hear the story about the day I shit my pants? I said, no, dude. And he tells this story like literally got sick on the way to work. And he had to like drive all the way home and all the way back. And like he still made it by 3 minutes. But it's like it's the accountability of the world, man. Like it's the accountability of saying, like, this, and by the way, it doesn't stop things from happening. It doesn't stop you from shitting your pants. Like, those things happen. But so I said to him, I assume you just talked about it on the show that day. And he goes, absolutely, bro. It was a whole 4-hour show about, he goes, dude, once I said it, like the number of people that called in and said, dude, that happened to me too. Like, just, it's funny how the world's all the same, man. We all deal with the same problems. We all have the same challenges. We all have the same funny stories that happen to us, the same ridiculous things that occur in our lives. Some people talk about them and some people don't. And so the show is a reflection. I just wrote this down because I've never, like, when you said it, like, that show is my work, man. And that show represents the work that I've done on myself. To go back and listen to episode 1 or episode 50 or episode 100 versus episode 650.
Mm.
They're different, man. That's a different dude on the other end of the microphone. That's a different husband. It's a different father. It's a different leader. It's a different friend. And that podcast documents that. It documents that for other people, but it documents that for me. And the other thing that I think people, someday are going to regret, like, dude, I'm so grateful that I started as early as I did talking into a microphone so that I could go back and look at that.
Mm.
I'm so grateful that I documented our journey of building this company on social media the way that I did. I wish I would have done more so that we can go back and look at it, because America is full of family businesses that are stories that are incredible. And the stories never get told, man, other than at the Thanksgiving dinner table, the dinner table, the Christmas dinner table. But here's the thing, man. Someday those people aren't here anymore. Someday, grandpa that started the company, he passes away. And if nobody has ever interviewed grandpa, if nobody has ever talked to their dad and documented that through some sort of platform, what a shame, man. What a shame. What if all the people, what if Aristotle never wrote anything down in a book? What if the Bible was never created? What if John Maxwell never shared his thoughts in a book on leadership? What if, go on and on, right? All of your heroes that you've studied, all of, you have the ability. We live in an age, the technology age, where we all have the ability to be a hero to somebody. But it takes consistency. It takes being willing to reveal your weaknesses in the beginning, whether you talk about them or they become self-evident as you go hundreds of episodes down the road, right? And people can look back and say, like, wow, man, he wasn't very good at that in the beginning. Like, you got to be willing to do that in order to document. And I really believe this, man. I give anybody credit that does a show, no matter how good or bad it might be, because it teaches them something about courage and consistency, and it reveals something about themselves that I don't think you can figure out any other way. I really don't. I don't think you can get there by doing anything else. It's the best. This is one of the best journeys of self-discovery that I've ever been on.
Mm.
Learning how to talk, learning how to listen, learning how to articulate, come up with topics, learning how to be able to say yes to an interview in a matter of seconds and not think twice about it. Hey, News Nation needs you to talk about XYZ. Can you be there in 30 minutes? 5 years ago, I would have thrown up in the garbage can if somebody asked me to do that, right? I would have been so nervous and apprehensive. And what am I going to say? And how am I going to sound? Today, I get the privilege of just saying yes. If my schedule's open, I just go on TV.
You mentioned the impact that having hundreds of episodes has on people. What do you what's underneath that, you think? Because I'll use example, just in 2023, I made this goal to do 100 podcasts in 100 days. And then that evolved into, hey, it's October 22nd. We're at 100 and I think the post is like 154. Let's see if we can get to 250. And the the comments and the interaction, I've texted everyone that's contributed this year. Hey, we hit 250. Thanks for contributing. Everybody that's been on that I'm aware of. I gotta relook at it. And the feedback that I've gotten is like remarkable. It's just to me, it doesn't seem like a big deal because, well, yeah, listen, this doesn't feel like work having talking to you doesn't feel like work. Um, preparing it's so where I'm trying to understand is like, what do you think it is? What and I think you've answered a lot of this. I guess you definitely have answered this without answering this in a bunch of different powerful ways. Um, but I guess I'm curious what you think. Like, what is actually going on that people, I feel like things are changing how people are viewing me because I made that accessible. That like this thing that I've been up to that like you have it, we talk all the time. But like I made that accessible, the work accessible to people. So the feedback is like been very overwhelming, crazy. It feels overwhelming.
There's a power to anything that's done in public because it's putting a stake in the ground. It's saying this is what I'm going to do. Anybody that knows you, dude, knows how hard you work, knows how much time you put in, knows how many books you read, knows how many. The show is a public statistical reminder, and it's a body of work that can be accessed. It's a representation of where you are in your life, where you are in your intellect, where you are in your journey, where you are, every aspect of your life gets put on display in some way. And, that can make people really uncomfortable. But if you can embrace that, man, what a gift it is. And by the way, what drives you, whether this is conscious or subconscious, none of us want to sound like idiots. And so we're working hard on ourselves if we're doing this. I look at somebody like Joe Rogan and I'm like, dude, what a beast, right? Of how he's able to carry conversations and have people listen for hours. And there's so many different interviewers. I admire, Ed Milet and the way that he interviews people. And you could go back and look at Larry King and so many different great interviewers in the world. And you aspire to be that. And so when you're doing this, when you're having, first of all, if you have 250 episodes, however many people that is, it's 100 something at least, right? Those are people you want to talk to for some reason. There's something about them you want to know. And to be able to get that, to be able to get what you want, what it is that you want to know, the piece of knowledge, you got to get better to get that. You've got to put in the time. You got to put in the reps. You got to do it 250 times. There's no way you're not a better podcaster right now than you were when you started the journey to 250. Not possible, because you can't have that many conversations that are recorded and not get better. It's literally impossible. I don't care what your intelligence level is. I don't care what your level of how you conversate with people. I don't care about any of that. You are better at every aspect of what this represents, which is, dude, if you're a terrible listener, you're going to be a better listener by the time you're done with 250 episodes, because enough people in 250 are going to cut you off to tell you that you're not listening. That's just how it works. You probably have 200 of them that aren't strong enough to respond and cut your ass off, but the other 50 are going to say, hey, I got something to say here. Can I say something? And that's the gift, is it's in that moment where you say, okay, I can either learn something here, or I can quit, or I can fight this person, or I can yell at them on the episode. Either way, it reveals something about you to yourself and to others. And so that's another version of what I was saying. Like 650 times, man, you learn stuff about yourself. You learn, You learn a lot. You know, you learn about, and by the way, I wouldn't encourage people just to record them. I would say, go back and listen to a handful.
Yeah.
It's funny. I had Kingston, was on the podcast.
Yeah.
My 9-year-old son, who is, in our family, he's usually the shy one, right? He's usually the one that, isn't the first to like speak all the time. But he wanted to be on the podcast. He did a great job. But what impressed me the most is after the fact, he wanted to listen to it. And then he wanted to know how I thought he did.
Wow.
What he could do better.
Hmm.
And at 9 years old, man, that's pretty awesome, And so imagine if he sticks like that for another 20 years of being open to feedback, of wanting to put himself in uncomfortable situations. What's he going to be? Who knows? Something great. Because if we're willing to put in the work, if we're willing to be uncomfortable, if we're willing to do that time after time after time after time, we're going to be good. We can't not get better.
To all those generational families out there, I'll tell you one thing he's showing is he's not going to destroy the family's wealth.
Right?
I mean, I'm laughing because it's a serious, serious subject. What a gift. You're role modeling behaviors that are leading to courage and inquiry, and introspection, and vulnerability, and at 9 years old.
Yeah, he's lucky. He goes to a school too that has that. They do 360 surveys, right? And they don't just tell him the good stuff; they tell him the bad stuff. And he learned something. Like somebody asked him if he had done something, and he didn't tell the truth. And so his classmates, like, they get to vote on what the punishment is, and
Wow.
so he got some things taken away from him at school. But he learns that, man. He learned something from that because he talks about it, and so now he's like,
Wow.
I'm always going to tell the truth, Dad,
Wow.
because it's better. It's better that way. And listen, those are, whether it's through a podcast or through those experiences in life, that's how we learn. It's how we get better. It's how we, take the mistakes that we have, take the shortcomings that we have, and we turn them into cemented strengths. Meaning, like, dude, when we disappoint people that we care about, like he disappointed his classmates, he felt like they looked at him different. He never doing that again, dude, because it hurts when people you care about, look different. And we've all been there, we've all done that. And so,
Weekly.
What's that?
Weekly.
Yeah. And so, when we learn from it, what a gift it is, man. What a gift it is to be able to look and say, like, not in vain. I didn't go through that in vain. I didn't sacrifice those 2 years in the beginning of literally never leaving this chair that I'm sitting in right now. I didn't sacrifice those for nothing. And I told myself that over and over. There were so many times that I wanted to quit. So many times, man. And I said to myself, like, I can't let my wife and kids sacrifice for nothing. Because if I quit right now, they get nothing on the return. But if I can keep going and I can make something out of this, our life gets better. And dude, I can't even tell you, man. It like legitimately makes me emotional to think about like just how different my life is today,
You're stronger than me because I did quit, but God intervened and paralyzed me. And then I was forced to stay with it.
Yeah, I'm sitting there last night and I've got, a lot of important people to me at the Pens game, and we're in our suite at the game, and I just hear my kids talking, and think that they're talking about all the things that they get to do, and all the different aspects of their lives, and I just sit back and and smiled. They were complaining. It was funny. They were complaining about the fact that like where we sit, you can't catch any t-shirts that get shot out of the cannon, right? Like because it's we're up in the suite level.
Yeah.
And you can't get pucks up there. They just don't fly that far, And so someone was asking them, well, do you guys always sit up here? And they're like, no, most of the time, but sometimes we sit down in the seats, down below, like, and it makes me uncomfortable to even talk about it, but like, it's almost like, just imagine this, those kids, they don't even know that the upper bowl of that arena exists.
Mm.
They've never been up there. And so their perspective, their standard, their ability to show up and be on a podcast because they've seen their dad do it 650 times is natural.
Yep. There you go.
They can articulate it. They don't, like, they wouldn't feel right with certain things in their life that, like, nobody has said to them, this is the way it is. It's just what they know, what they've been exposed to. The standard has changed. So if I have to live below that standard now, I am naturally uncomfortable because the standard of my life was set up here. So to your point about losing wealth or them not doing, like, that's my whole mission in life, man, is to show them what it looks like. I'm never going to be a perfect father. None of us are perfect parents. I'm not going to be a perfect husband, but I'm going to try to set the example of exactly as close as I can get it to what that looks like. Taking my daughter on dates, taking her places by myself, holding the door for her, right? Buying her mother flowers, how I treat my wife. Those are all examples. So is doing a podcast every day. It's all an example. And when I interviewed Paisley, and she said, Paisley's my 11-year-old daughter for the listeners. And she said, I asked her what she loved most about our family. And she said, I'm just glad that everything, now that everything's good at the Pavement Group, that you're home now and we get to be together. Because for the first X number of years, I was on an airplane every other week at a minimum. And I was gone for 2 days, 4 days, 6 days, whatever it took to get the job done. And so, the old phrase is those things that people learn, they're more, especially kids, they're caught more than they're taught. And so, I talk about this on my show a lot, but like how we live matters, man. We might be the only Bible somebody ever reads. So how we live, how we respond to things, people watch. And as John Maxwell says, the law of the picture means people do what people see. And so if we're great examples of how to treat people, how to talk to people, how to do all those things the right way, or at least right as often as we can, the end result will be exceptional. And, listen, man, my life is far from where I want it to be. But when I look at my life, it is an exceptional version of what it used to be.